It's 10 o'clock, so we'll move to calling to order. I'll call the meeting to order, and do we have minutes to approve? We have minutes to approve. Well, say, don't put any roll call here. I'm going by, okay, we'll do roll call first.
Brown,
Here.
Roz,
Here.
Kopi, Leonard,
Here.
Sanchez,
Here.
Allen.
Have we got enough?
Yeah.
So now we can have a motion to approve the minutes. Just the people online that can't hear. Mr. Kopi, Mr. Kopi, do you want to move the minutes? You awake? Okay, so
Braz will move.
Braz will do them. Is there a second?
Kopi second.
Doesn't make any difference. Who's going to check?
I listened to it, so.
Brown does it.
But, yeah.
Is there discussion on these? Kopi's, no, Braz is first.
Kopi did.
Hey, no, Kopi then. Is there discussion on these or corrections? If not, we'll have a roll call.
Brown,
Aye.
Roz,
Yes.
Kopi, Leonard,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
The minutes are approved. I don't see anybody for public comment. We don't have anybody in the audience today. This is slow. Tell Mr. Tepe that. He was feeling bad that nobody came to his stuff. So how about partners, Kane County Farm Bureau?
Good morning. For those who are remote, my name is Steve Arnold. I'm the manager of the Kane County Farm Bureau. I'd like to welcome the new members of the committee and congratulate all of you who were either re-elected or elected in November. Thank you. I come every month and give a brief report on our association. For those who are here in person, I have distributed a copy of our December 2020 publication. And I want to highlight a couple of things in that publication for the benefit of the committee. The first thing that we reported on in December is the fact that a project we did in July received one of 12 national awards from our national association, the American Farm Bureau Federation. And that project was the installation of a pollinator rain garden on our property on Randall Road in St. Charles. Many volunteers, including some members of this committee, helped with the public planting of that, but I really want to give kudos to Jody Walnick in the Water Resources Department, because had it not been for her helping shepherd through changes in the stormwater ordinance, we would not have undertaken that project. So that was a community event, but was also in recognition of the fact that the stormwater ordinance that passed in late 2018, is that right? July of 2019, included provisions for improvements on farms that allowed for best management practices in lieu of stormwater detention. So part of our intent was not only to install something publicly to beautify our property, but to show farmers and others one of those approved best management practices that they could undertake when they made development improvements on their property. We also reported last month that our not-for-profit foundation made a $20,000 grant to the Hinckley Big Rock FFA alumni. They are constructing an ag education building on their campus in Hinckley, and it was a project that we thought was worthy of support from our not-for-profit foundation. We also announced last month that that foundation is embarking on some new ways to raise revenue for things like the grant that we made to the Hinckley Big Rock FFA. And one of those is a project through Prairie Farms Dairy, which happens to be a for-profit business affiliate of the Farm Bureau. But Prairie Farms Dairy allows schools and not-for-profits to gather milk caps from Prairie Farms Dairy products, and through a program called Our Caps, Your Cause, then they reward not-for-profits for gathering that proof of purchase, that milk cap. So we have announced that we're going to participate in that program from January 1 moving forward. So we encourage anybody that uses Prairie Farms products to keep those caps and return them to the King County Farm Bureau on Randall Road in St. Charles. And those who don't purchase Prairie Farms dairy products, that you might consider looking at them when you're in the grocery store. In more recent news, our statewide association completed its first virtual annual meeting and business session the first week of December. At that business meeting, I think there were 336 voting delegates that voted on policy positions on local, state, and national issues for the coming year. Those have not all been announced, but I will be coming back to the committee probably with a list of our federal, state, and local priorities as a agricultural association. As part of those meetings also, there are changes in leadership and there are competitions. We had two folks from Kane County, actually a brother and sister, Wayne Gerke who lives west of Burlington, was elected the chair of the Illinois Farm Bureau's statewide Young Leader Committee, and his sister Carolyn was runner-up in a statewide discussion meet that brings younger farmers together to talk about current issues in agriculture. So was a successful virtual annual meeting, and we had a couple of young people involved in the industry that represented King County and the industry very well. So that concludes my report.
You realize that today is maple syrup day? That would have been a good prize, but we don't have. And did you, Mr. Caucus, the 20th is Ugly Sweater Day. We'll see if we have some kind of meeting so we can get our ugly sweaters out. They did that once at the Forest Reserve, and Caucus and I went to Walmart and purchased. We thought they could be the ugliest, but there were others who were just as bad.
Competition, we didn't.
Yeah, it was fierce competition.
Yeah.
Is Northern Illinois Food Bank online?
Yes, hi, I'm here. Hello and welcome and congratulations to the newly elected board. My name is Julia Lemp. I'm a marketing communication specialist with Northern Illinois Food Bank, and I handle a lot of our advocacy work. So we've had a very long-standing, great relationship with the Kane County Board, and more specifically with the Agriculture Committee. So I appreciate your time in letting me come give you a little bit of an update about the food bank. As you know, we've been incredibly busy since the beginning of this pandemic and are going to continue to be busy. This year, thus far, this fiscal year, from July until now, we've served 46 million meals, and we're projecting that by June, by the end of our fiscal year, we'll serve 96 million meals. Just for reference, last fiscal year, we served about 80 million, and the year prior to that, we were at 69 million. So this pandemic is really impacting our communities, and we know this is probably going to be the case for months, if not years, to follow. So we have really ramped up our distributions. This year total, we have had 412 mobile distributions. So that's a mix of 77 of our pop-up markets, which are serving, anywhere from like 1,000 to 2,000 families, as well as 335 mobile distributions, which we have always done, but we've really, really ramped up our distributions this year. And so I shared this last time, but just for anyone who is new, we are in the heat of our holiday meal box distributions. And this year we're anticipating to serve 49,000 holiday meal boxes, which is a 45% increase from the previous year. In previous years, we've been sitting more at about 30,000. So again, just shows the need in our community. And we are still facing this federal commodity cliff from USDA. So on December 31st, about 50% of the food that food banks across America receive from USDA is set to end. That's through the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program and the Farmers to Families food boxes, as well as some trade mitigation food. So we're still anticipating a decline in the amount of government food coming to our network. We've ramped up our purchasing. So we're still going to work to meet this need, but that's still something that we're facing. Just for reference, we're serving about 300,000 meals each day during our COVID response. So we're really working to try to meet the increased need in our communities. Obviously, it's unfortunate that we are having to do this, but we're working. We're going to be here throughout the holiday season into the New Year's. Just for your reference, if there's opportunities for you to share, we are still in need of volunteers, especially as we head into the colder months. We know that our volunteers, want to stay home and stay warm, and we totally get that, and we get that the pandemic is still happening. But if you know people who are healthy, who are able to come out and volunteer with us, we'd love. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, we would just, we're asking for a call for volunteers. We do also have some virtual opportunities for volunteers to get engaged with us. So we have a social media ambassador program where people can share information on social media about the work that we do in hunger in our area, just to promote awareness. We do also have advocacy alerts if people want to get involved more in an advocacy government relations standpoint. So we've got a lot of different opportunities to work with our food bank. And so, as you're in the community, if you feel compelled to have a call for volunteers for the food bank, that's something we would greatly appreciate. Thank you for your time, and thank you for our continued wonderful partnership.
Mr. Leonard has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Lump, I was wondering two things. You said this year it looks like you're going to be serving 96 million meals. What is the average cost per meal? And secondly, you said during the COVID pandemic, you were serving, and I didn't know if I heard it correctly, was it 3,000 meals a day or 30,000 or 300,000? I wasn't really sure on that.
Sure, so we're providing about 300,000 meals each day during this COVID pandemic. So yes, you heard right, 300,000 meals each day. We serve in a 13 county service area, so that's across our 13 counties. That's not just Kane. But yeah, you heard that number. It's 300,000 each day. And then as far as cost per meal, I can, go back and try to find this information. I would imagine it varies. We get different, donations. We have different purchasing power over different items. However, I can tell you that every $1 that's donated to our food bank, we're able to provide about $8 worth of groceries. So we really are able to stretch our dollars and provide food to our neighbors that's healthy, nutritious, and more than could be purchased at a grocery store.
Well, thank you very much for that information. I didn't realize how enormous your organization was and how many people it served. Very impressive. So thank you very much for all your work.
know what you need to do?
And thank you for your
You need to
partnership.
offer a tour of the building and let the county board come over and look it over. And maybe some people could volunteer to
Yeah.
help on helping
We'd be
days.
more than happy to. Yeah, recently, like in the last week, so I'm not sure, we reached out to the board and the chairwoman and just with some more information about our advocacy work. And we'd love to have people, you know, come have a tour of our facility. We're right up the road in Geneva, or volunteer with us. So I'll make sure to stay in touch. And we appreciate it. Thank you.
Do you have any numbers for what you might have served last year so we can have a comparison? Meals?
Sure. So, yeah, last year our meals served was, in total, we had 80.3 million meals in fiscal year 20. About 30 million of those meals came between March and June with our pandemic response. So pandemic response has really heightened our meal service. And then the year prior to that, fiscal year 19, we were serving about 69 million meals.
Well, we're glad you're here. A lot of people are glad you're here. If you think of 300,000 meals, that's over half the county.
A day.
A day. If there's no other questions, we'll move on to our water quality report.
Thank you. If you don't mind, I'd like to give a brief introduction to the new board members that are here in the Ag Committee. We do, under the Environmental and Water Resources, support this committee mainly as it relates to water issues. One of our main goals has been for many years to reactivate drainage districts. And so those not familiar, drainage districts were originally set up throughout the state, specifically in Kane County, for farmers in the late 1800s to work together to improve the drainage on their farms. Many of these drainage districts went inactive after they were originally activated in the late 1800s. And they reactivated many of them in the 1950s because of the lack of maintenance on our drainage districts and our ditches and our tile systems throughout the county that were negatively impacting the farm ground. So again, after the 1950s, levies were made on those property owners. They worked together and improved those drainage districts. And again, they went dormant until they started reactivating in the early 2000s. And so over the past 15 years, we've had the opportunity to work with a number of different drainage districts and get them reactivated. The most recent one is a very large one up in Rutland Township that was reactivated last year. We've also reactivated the Big Rock Drainage District and one of the Virgil Drainage Districts. And we have multiple property owners that have reached out to us for additional reactivation of drainage districts. We don't support them monetarily, but we do support them with staff time. There's a lot of research that goes into reactivating the drainage districts. It's usually the easiest to reactivate them as they were last active with the same area. And then at that point in time, we do hold an escrow funds from those landowners that they're able to hire an engineer and an attorney and then redelineate those drainage districts, go through the court system and get their system up and running. And then we will even attend their meetings and play secretary for the day. So whatever we need resource-wise to get them reactivated, they're a great resource in our county and they're important in our farmland to make sure that farmland is preserved and it's most productive in its state that it is. So that's one of our areas that we work in. And the other area is water quality, specifically with the Gulf hypoxia issue down in the Gulf of Mexico. Many of the goals at the state level for the state of Illinois relate specifically to non-point source pollution. And that speaks directly to our ag farm operations here in Kane County. So tying that back in, we are an area that is specifically identified because of the amount of tile drainage that we have in the flat area that we have up here in Kane County. As to the contributions related to nitrogen pollution, you see more phosphorus pollution relative to the rolling hills in central Illinois, where the phosphorus actually comes off the farm fields with the sediment that's going into the ditch systems. And so we want to really drill down onto where the pollution is coming from, and what is the best practices to put into place. As Mr. Arnold, we work closely with the Farm Bureau and Steve Arnold to look at different practices that might be best managed here in Kane County to help our nutrient loading going into our streams and ditches. So with that being said, we have worked with Janice Hill, who is in the development department, and received a grant to do some water quality sampling, specifically on our agricultural areas in the county. We identified areas that were different geographically. Some areas have steeper slopes, some areas are flatter and have heavier soils. And then specifically want to look at the water quality coming out of our tile system. So to just give you an update on that water quality sampling will begin in January of 2021. So we're all ready with our Carhartts and our safety equipment to get out there and start the sampling. We've coordinated with the Fox River Study Group, and we'll be doing sampling on the same days that they're doing sampling. And so we can use the comparatives of the sampling that they're doing on Fierce and Otter Creek and Tyler Creek and on the Fox River, along with our sampling results. And we've contracted with First Environmental to actually analyze those samples. So we're looking forward to doing that starting in the third week of January and then continuing throughout 2021. And we will be excited to bring those reports back to this committee for additional consideration. Thank you.
Any questions? Mr. Brown?
Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Jody, Mooseheart just recently, in fact, I think they're still in the middle of it, doing a very large retiling project. Is that something that your office is involved in?
It is not. It's not something that's permitted through our stormwater ordinance. They are not specifically in a drainage district, but certainly that's one of the areas that we're going to reach out to them to see if there's a potential to add them into the sampling to find out what kind of water quality they have coming off those fields as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Kais? Nope. Can't believe it. Thank you, Jody. No, here we are. We stirred a question.
Is that the bioreactor? How's it? We were, what, 2 years ago, put the bioreactor. That's still part of the active program?
We have not sampled the bioreactor as of yet. The requirements from the University of Illinois are to sample it on a weekly basis. And that's just beyond what our staff capabilities are. And so we're still looking to, and we were in the process of looking for partners to partner with us. So we would only have to do, use staff time to sample once a month, and then we could potentially get other partners to sample the other weeks. But it kind of fell apart when COVID hit. So our intent is to still sample that. It was the field that is contributing to that bioreactor was not planted in 2019. So 2020, it was planted. And certainly we want to be sampling on a year where the farmer is actively farming on the property.
Mr. Chairman, Copy asked to be recognized.
Yes, Tom.
Thank
Go
you,
ahead.
sir. I have a question for Jody. In regards to the drainage district in Rutland, I understand that the Kishwaukee watershed or headwaters is situated in that northern part of the county, in Rutland Township specifically. And I was curious if the Kishwaukee watershed can fall under your jurisdiction, since there's about 2 miles to the north, which is still Kane County.
Yes, it actually does. And certainly under the stormwater ordinance, there's provisions for detention fee in lieu going into the Kishwaukee watershed as opposed to the Fox River if the development occurs in that area. So we do call out the Kishwaukee specifically in that plan, and we were involved in the Kishwaukee watershed plan that was completed several years back by DeKalb County. There was some blanket stream bank stabilization type work that was being proposed to farmers up in that area. But given the tile drainage, I'm not sure that would have been the best practice for there. And so it's certainly an area where we're working with the drainage districts up in that area, as well as DeKalb County, to look at that area. And some of our, I believe 2 of our sampling points are actually in the Kishwaukee watershed.
I'm specifically concerned about the drainage ditch that had been excavated 100 years ago that's in a dilapidated state. And we've been depending on those ditches forever. And I think some of the development that has taken place is depending on that drainage within those ditches. Now, I understand that building tile here and hither and yon is not the best alternative for drainage, but nonetheless, we cannot ignore the drainage ditch. And I would, if you haven't, can I ask you this? Have you, I'm sure you have, but have you have you physically looked at the drainage ditches up on that north end, north of Gilbert's?
I can't say that I've looked at all of them. So if you have a specific area that we want to look at, certainly send it over to me and we can have staff go up there and evaluate it, as well as look to see what drainage district it might fall under.
Excellent. I would assume it's the Rutland Township Drainage District that you had mentioned. That's what spurred the question. So yeah, I would be looking forward to inviting you up there and taking a look at it. Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? We'll move on to growing the cane program with Matt Tinsley.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if I could just briefly introduce myself to the new committee members. I work with Janice Hill in the planning division of the development department.
Oh, nice picture.
And most of my work is focused on supporting the Growing for Cane program, which was created by the Growing for Cane ordinance. So much of that is focused on supporting local food system projects and supporting our local farm and food businesses. So today I'd just like to give a couple of updates on some of the activities that we've been focused on under the Growing for Cane program. And I'm not sure, let me see if I can share my screen here, just a moment. Okay.
Hold on, guys, I'm gonna get it moved up. Matt, hold on just a sec.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, there you
Okay, now you're good.
go.
Is it good? Okay.
Oh,
So I discussed this a little bit during the last meeting, but I wanted to just share a quick couple of updates on the farm operators survey and the mini grant program. So we were able to launch this program back on December 4th, is when the program formally opened. And so we were able to distribute the announcement for this program to about 50 food farmers in Kane County, a database that we had developed over time. And so this is really a targeted outreach to those 50 food farmers. And we're going to be following up with them individually pretty soon, just so that we can make sure that we have a good response rate to this grant program. Again, the mini grants are for about $200, starting at $200. And the amount of time that it takes to complete the survey and the grant application is probably around 30 to 45 minutes. So we want to make sure that the farmers who might be applying for this just understand, what the commitment is, and just kind of help them understand, what this opportunity could do to help them out. So we're going to be following up during the last week or so of the program. It's currently set to close on December 23rd. And so we're going to be pushing to get that response rate up as much as possible. And I wanted to just share a couple of announcements that went out through the Growing for Cane e-newsletter. This is the periodic newsletter that we send out to a larger database of around 600 or so food and farm contacts. And this includes not just farmers, but other stakeholders and partners that we work with over time. And so this is one of the announcements that was included in the last newsletter. This is a new resource that was created by the Illinois Stewardship Alliance. It's called the Food Farmer Caucus, and basically how it operates is it's a discussion forum for farmers across the state of Illinois. And so it's meant to be a place where farmers can gather together, they can share their experiences, they can solve problems together. But it was also created to be a space where farmers could come up with legislative solutions to problems that they might be experiencing and be able to move those through the state legislative process. So it's just getting underway. There's a link on this slide to the page for anybody that would like to learn more about it. But it's just one more networking resource that exists in addition to some others that we've talked about in the past, including the Chicago Food Policy Action Council's working group system that they set up. But I'd say that this one is a little bit more inclusive of farmers of a variety of different types of backgrounds, just because it's open to the state. I know the Chicago Food Policy Action Council group is more focused on urban farmers and farming operations based in Chicago. So we think this one might be, might reflect some of the needs and interests of Kane County farmers a bit more. I also wanted to call some attention to a portal that was developed by the University of Illinois Extension. This is a web page that's been around for a little while, but it certainly is a great resource, and it bears repeating and drawing some additional attention to. And primarily, it was developed as a resource for food farmers, but it also includes a number of resources for other stakeholder groups, for farmers market managers, and it's really just a great resource with current information. One of the more useful tools is a video library within this portal, and it includes a number of different instructional videos for farmers and how to conduct a number of different activities and tasks on their farm, whether it's putting together and managing a high tunnel, implementing different pest management practices, using cover crops. So it's just a great free resource, and we just wanted to make sure that our farming community was aware of it. So that's pretty much all I have. I'd be happy to take any questions.
No questions? I think you're going to escape questions. We're saving them all for. No, you're not going to escape.
I'm not sure I'm familiar. This is Chris Caius. I'm not sure I'm familiar with the high tunnel.
A high tunnel it's synonymous with a hoop house. It's an enclosure for season extension, extending the growing season. So it's a pretty common device. So the library just included some instructional videos on how to use those effectively.
Sure. I guess I'd never heard the term. I thought they were just hoop houses.
Well, they just came up with that this last year, I think. We used to call them.
That's what they used to connect the stores downtown Minneapolis, isn't it? High tunnel.
Well, you can put up a high tunnel anywhere and have yourself a farm. Controlled environment. If there's no more questions, save your questions for Janice Hill.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Janice.
Good to be with you all, and congratulations. We're super happy to have you all on the committee and meet with you monthly to talk about agriculture. It's the best place to be, we think. Matt's gonna help me with my slides a little bit. I have 2 presentations for you today, so as they come up. I was thinking too, as we were talking and hearing from Jody and Matt and Farm Bureau and Northern Illinois Food Bank, I think what we'll do for our next Growing for Cane newsletter is to introduce the committee members in our next Growing for Cane newsletter, along with our regular partners, and just the recent presentations highlights of the recent presentations that we heard, as well as our staff, Jody and Matt and our partners, so that everyone knows kind of like a highlight of what we do, and that they can listen in to our into our committee, because these are live and recorded and available certainly on the web for people to hear. So we'll just send that reminder out through our next newsletter, because it's great information, and not everyone can tune in at 10 o'clock on Thursdays, but they are available on the web. So with that, I'm going to start with my first presentation. One of the, I would say, benefits of COVID right now is that all of the webinars and meetings have gone virtual, so we're able to attend these without maybe traveling downtown or to other locations, and do many of these that we would normally be able to do. And over the years, I've been able to go to the Chicago Farmers events periodically, but with a trip downtown, it takes much more time. This one I was able to jump in on their December meeting. Chicago Farmers, if you don't know, are a membership group of primarily investors of Illinois farmland, and they gather together monthly for meetings to learn more about their investment. So next slide. And Illinois Department of Agriculture was there for this last meeting to talk about their efforts as a state staff and what they're doing. So I thought I would bring to you some information that they presented to Chicago farmers. And of course, some of our spectacular highlights in agriculture in Illinois, of course, nice reminders that we are #1 in the nation in soybean production. And of course, I've added the Kane County statistics from our last Census of Agriculture 2017. So you can see our acreage in soybean production, corn production. We are #2 in the nation statewide, and you can see our acreage there in corn, and then our head count in hog and pig head count there, in our nation, our status in the nation in terms of swine production. Next slide. And of course, when it comes to Illinois food manufacturing, we are outstanding when it comes to all aspects of manufacturing and food processing. And I am sure, although I don't have statistics for Kane County at this point, all of our municipalities have these businesses within them, and we are major in this category within our built environment as well. Within our urban corridor, we have major categories in this and contribute from the economic standpoint in Kane County as well. Next slide. The State Department of Agriculture also talked about where they plan to move forward in this category, which they call new, beginning, and socially disadvantaged. Now, their definition is a little bit different than the federal definition. The feds use the term historically under-resourced, which includes the new and beginning farmer, the racial categories of Black, mixed race, Asian, Hispanic, and then any farmer with military service. So they group these categories together and call them under-resourced from the federal category. So this is our grouping from the Census of Ag, just to give you an idea of our numbers. And they're starting to bring together programming. Now, what this means from the state standpoint in terms of what they mean by urban agriculture, I'm not sure, but we farm obviously at the metropolitan fringe, so we'll be looking to see what that webinar was and whether or not we can offer that. That's already occurred, but hopefully they've recorded this and we can offer that on our Growing for Cane website or newsletter and provide that link along with the one that Matt provided as well for those other resources. Okay, Matt, next slide. And also, same with Homegrown for Heroes and this campaign. They've had this program for a while, but they're hoping to relaunch this. I went in and looked, and right now we have no Kane County farms or farmers registered. You can search this through county-based website that they have by county. We don't have any of our farmers listed right now. Our last count, again, with the 2017 Census of Agriculture, we had 74 farmers with military service and no one registered yet from Kane County. But of course, that's also because they haven't really done their relaunch of the campaign. So we'll look into this a little bit more and find out what exactly they have in mind and how they plan to relaunch, but maybe we can tie this in again with some further efforts that we're doing here in Kane County to profile our farms and our farmers. And also, again, in terms of bringing more resources to our farmers, the Illinois Specialty Crop Conference is coming up. This is an annual event with lots of great technical training. That goes not just to food farmers, but beyond that in terms of other specialty crops. In Illinois, last count, over 3,000 farms in Illinois that were considered specialty crops. We don't have that latest data for cane. We're working on that database. As Matt mentioned, we had 50 food farms, but to expand that to include specialty farms, we're working on that database next. I know we've had discussions with Steve Arnold about this ever-growing group of farms and trying to get our arms around this number. So we'll be working on this and trying to get this database for ourselves of who in Kane County is considered a specialty crop. But we do want to get as many people signed up for this. There's lots of great resources on there. So unfortunately, they have their deadline of December 28th coming up. So as we call our food farmers, we'll be talking to them about this as well for that Compere grant. We'll be mentioning this as well. And finally, what the state staff mentioned and the Chicago farmers mentioned to their group as well. They have their next webinar coming up on soil health, and this is January 11th. I'll be signing up for this as well. We want to learn as much as we can about soil health and tie that into the work that Jody is doing in terms of water quality. This is where the future is going in terms of everything that we're doing in terms of supporting our farmers here in Kane is soil and water based. So I'll be curious to see what they have to offer here for this programming. So this is coming up, again, another virtual conference as well. So if anyone's interested, let me know, and we'd be happy to sign you up for this as well if anyone's interested. So this concludes what the state and Chicago farmers presented to their membership group. Does anyone have any questions?
Mr. Leonard has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Hill, you had mentioned in your 2017 report that King County had 239 new farmers, 74 had a military background. I was wondering, of those 239 new farmers. Two things. What period of time was that number derived from? And number two, are these new farmers individuals working on existing farms, contract farmers, or did they buy land and start farming their own?
Good question. So this is that 2017 number is federal Census of Agriculture, first of all. And then the federal Census of Agriculture considers any farmer farming under 10 years as a beginning farmer. So that's a pretty broad category, and they do not have to be farming on their own land. They can be farming on rented land or owned land. So that's a very, very broad category for that. Now for us, in terms of our data, and as we start to drill down into more detailed information, and the survey that Matt mentioned for our food farmers with the Compere, we're starting to get into a little bit more detail on that so that we have more information about what our farmers are doing right now and what their needs are. And that's really important because then we can bring more technical resources and financial resources when we know what the situation is and what their needs are.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
I
And
have
I'll
a
be right.
question, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, sorry.
Tom Copey.
Tom Copey's got a question.
Sure.
Hi, Janice.
Hi there.
What is the minimum criteria to be considered as a specialty farm? In acreage or in bulk of production, or what? How would you determine that?
The U.S. Census defines the specialty crop as the crop itself, and there are a list of crops that qualify under the crop itself. Now, in terms of the definition of a farm, the state has one definition and the federal government has another, and then different communities have other definitions. So, and that's something that I kind of found out by doing a little bit of research, and it does present a problem depending on where you're growing, right? So if you are in a municipality and you are growing in town and you are not growing for profit and you're growing with a community education facility, for example, but you're growing on a large piece of land that's donated, then some people might look at that and say you're a farm, but because you're donating that produce, for example, if you're growing produce, it probably wouldn't be considered a farm by federal definition, right? So, yeah, we have some of those distinctions that create, some problems in some cases, depending on the situation. So, and then we have the situation about the land and who owns it and whether it's assessed for farming because it is being operated and produced for farming versus who's doing the work, right? So there are those considerations, but that's why it's important sometimes to acknowledge who's providing the statistic and when that was done. That's why I noted those were US Census figures, and we have further data that we've been working on over the years and that can drill down a lot deeper. And that's why we do the surveys that we do and the land analysis that we do so that we can try to bring more current information to you.
Mr. Arnold?
I think Janice is absolutely right. The definition is very difficult, and it varies from government entity to government entity. But my understanding is in terms of the federal Census of Agriculture, the federal government considers anyone who has more than $1,000 in income in any particular year on a Schedule F, on a farming schedule, to be a farmer. So as Janice said, you can have one person who donates all their product, they're not a farmer. You can have a community group of 25 people who all earn less than $1,000 from the sale of an agricultural product, or again, who donate it through a not-for-profit or a local food bank, and that's zero farmers. So again, my understanding is $1,000 in farm product sales is the federal definition of a farmer for the Census of Agriculture.
That's right. Okay, I'm sorry.
Any more questions? Mr. Caucus, you could be a farmer when you build your high tunnel.
Sounds great to me.
$1,000.
Cucumbers all year round, fresh cucumbers, love it. Janice, I see that at the webinar sounds very interesting. It's the sign up is a $15 ticket price. Is that something that's comp to us as members of the?
Yeah, we have, we'll have a membership to Chicago Farmers as a department. So yeah, I can take care of that if you'd like to attend.
You sign me up, that'd be great.
Yes, yes. Okay, let's go to the next presentation, which is Farmland Protection, looking forward to 2021 and beyond. So we can go to the next slide. So 2021 is our 20th anniversary year, which I'm really excited to say. And what my hope for this year is to not just be nostalgic about it, although that's going to be a little hard for me to do because, of course, it's so close to my heart, as you know. But what I'd like to really do with this time is to really do some data mining this year and to find out about this investment that the county has made and the federal government has made and the commitments that our 30 plus farm families have made to this program, and how we can take this information about what we've learned and move forward. So what I'd like to know is, what's happened to these farms, and, what do we really know? We don't often, I stay in touch with a lot of the farm families, and of course, Matt does an annual inventory of these farms and an analysis to make sure that they're still in farming, but we don't do a formal survey or anything of these farms. So I'd like to do that. And I do have some questions for them about how many stayed, and what if they reinvested in their farm and in their operations. And I'm curious about that. Some places around the country that have these programs do very, very formal analysis of that. I'm not so sure that I want to do super detailed on that, but I do want to know some of those things. I'd like to know how many families stayed versus how many families left. And then moving forward, I'm very curious if any of them are interested in future conservation cropping programs like the STAR program. Patrick was here from the Soil and Water District recently and talked to the committee about the STAR program and the success he's already had in introducing that program to some of the cane farmers. And I'm curious if any of those families that have participated in Farmland Protection would be interested in STAR. They're already obviously very minded, very conservation minded, I would say, because of their interest in land protection. So as we move forward with some of the work that Jody's doing in water quality and conservation cropping with STAR, I think that group would be very interesting to talk about. And then of course, we have the waiting list for 2021 and beyond, and we'll be doing some survey work with them. So these are some of the things you'll be hearing from us as we move forward. Okay, next slide. And, back to that Ag Census again, It will be time, believe it or not, in 2022 for that federal Ag Census to happen again. So you'll start to hear some of the promotions for the federal Ag Census coming up, I bet, in 2021. Here, just some of the numbers, I wanted to give you kind of like that top line of the federal Ag Census numbers of land and farms in Kane County through 1987 through 2017. And then, of course, we can look at other numbers as well. And, and as we mentioned, we have more detailed data, but just to get ready, this will be coming up too. And another reason this is important, next slide, is that we know from national trends and other trends in Illinois, things that we have to watch for and to be mindful for. And you know that Matt and I and Mark we're planners, and we're land planners first. And so our goals always kind of reside in the land and land use first, and land protection for agriculture is always top of mind for us. And so we are always thinking about land, the potential of land conversion and then consolidation when it comes to farms and farm size, and how this all affects farm operations, and then the technical resources and financial resources that we bring to the table to support farm vitality. And that's probably the most important thing that we do. But we have to be mindful of the policies that we put in place, that they really are supporting what we want them to support. So we know nationwide that when you have a geographic area that is a metropolitan fringe, that we are, that's the area that we are susceptible to farmland conversion. Obviously, you just saw the statistics, and we know how, and we know of our land plan, our 2020 foundational plan that led to our 2030 and 2040 plans, and how we've worked to avoid sprawl, and how that's affected our farms. But we also know that we have super high quality soils, and how we want to support the maintenance of that as well. But then we also have this issue of farm consolidation and the size of farms, and this has been happening just in general, the size of farms increasing. And so what that does is that means that small farms and mid-size farms then can fall away. So if that happens, then beginning farmers cannot, or have a harder time coming into the picture. And so, especially when it comes to food farms and specialty crop farms, if they can't have access to the land base, especially in terms of ownership, then they're cut out of the picture. So these are things that we can think about and factor that in terms of the technical and financial resources that we have to offer. Okay, next slide. Yes, and then also to be something that I'm just coming to the conclusion of after the years of experience of working in farmland protection for Kane County. For years, we were able to apply for funding on behalf of Kane County and receive funding on behalf of Kane County, but we've noticed over the years that the requirements for funding now are partnership, and that going alone into a grant it just doesn't work, and that we're much stronger when we are applying with a group. And of course, this came through very clearly when we applied for additional farmland protection funds as part of the regional conservation partnership with the Conservation Fund for the Illinois Working Lands Group. That's how we were able to double our farmland protection dollars. And of course, everything in this is related to conservation practices. Next slide. And I just wanted to highlight some of these, not only the commitments, and I know I've gone over this a little bit before, but just to kind of highlight the commitments of what we received. There are 13 partners statewide, and we are going to receive, as a total group, over $8 million in federal conservation funds over the next 5 years. And I think we're hoping to go for another 5 years after that. And that includes farmland protection dollars specifically for Kane County as well, along with other partners as well. And then a focus of land management and restoration for the other partners throughout the state. Next slide. But here's what I really want to show you as we start to put together the partnership commitment with this group, because we're working on this right now for Kane County. If you look at the resource concerns, primary and secondary first, the concern, inadequate habitat, resource concern, water quality. So we've already started in our work with Jody in terms of setting up that commitment to do the water sampling, which is going to be one of our foundational projects as we fine tune this with our farmland protection commitments in terms of where we're going to be able to put those farmland protection dollars in doing that research. But look at the strategies. So we'll have to align these strategies with our selection of our farmland protection dollars and where we recruit and where we select our farms for farmland protection. And this is a little bit different than what we've done in the past. Now, remember that farmland protection is always voluntary. It's a completely voluntary program. Farms come to us, farm owners come to us and say, hey, we want to participate in this. And we've always had a waiting list, and I'm sure we always will. But when we go out to bring people into this program, it's going to be a little bit expanded, I will say, because we will be looking at farms that buffer around existing natural areas. Well, we've done that before because we have selected farms that magnify our commitments around other protected farms, around Kane County Forest Preserve properties, things like that. So we've already kind of done that to some degree. So that's kind of adding to the restoration investment there. Connections as well, kind of same thing, but again, connecting corridors, stream corridors. I think that water quality feature is going to be featured very much here. Here's the third category, championing those small and mid-sized farmers, the diversified farmers, organic, the cover cropping, the STAR program that I mentioned. Those are going to be things that we hadn't really emphasized as much in the past, right? And then the same thing with emphasizing those historically underserved farms. And then finally, climate, food protection and security. We've had some food farmers participate in the past, but I think we're going to see more for farmland protection as well coming through. So those will be the things that we'll see in our RCPP program, farmland protection participants coming through, and you'll start to see a little bit more of that. Technical resources, as we talk about that in the coming year and years, for both our conventional farmland protection program and then our RCPP moving forward. So I think that's my last slide for that one. Does anyone have any questions?
Mrs. Allen has a question.
Okay.
Good morning, Janice. Thanks for the 20 years of work on this. Farmland protection has always been really interesting to me because when I was first going door to door, it was in the papers. And so people said, well, you're going to put taxpayer dollars into these farmers and they're going to collect the money and then they're just going to go and sell their land and be a Walgreens sometime in the future, and that doesn't seem right. So I actually read the agreement that these folks sign, and it's a circular agreement. This land is protected it will never be developed outside of agriculture or wilderness or something that represents open land. And if you saw that happen, you could go into any court and complain about it. And when the judge read the document, the judge would see that the land has to always stay in this program. So there's every kind of protection for us. And where Janice gets just a ton of credit is that when you first go out and talk to farmers and say, hi, we're the government and we're here to help you. There are any number of people, including the farmers that I grew up around, who would immediately say, get away from me. I don't want to have anything to do with you. And the fact is that this program has a waiting list. We have farmers who are anxious to participate, which I think speaks to its success. Janice, my question for you is this. I don't have a lot of follow-up, but what follow-up I do have is that people who received these monies used it to buy newer equipment, larger equipment, better equipment, or some went out and bought more land. And I just wondered if, when you're doing your survey, if you could ask people if you're a generational farmer and your children want to farm and your grandchildren want to farm, well, that means that everybody has to be able to make a living, which means you have to have enough land in order to support that. So I guess my question would be is, could you ask these folks if there were instances where they bought more land in order to support more of
Mm-hmm.
into the future?
Absolutely.
That's a reasonable question.
Absolutely. Right. No, that's a valid question, and we'd be happy to ask that. We know from experience that one of the things, unanticipated benefits of the program that we found over the years is that one of the transactions that often happened after the closing of the Farmland Protection case was that the immediate transaction that might happen after that was either a family member, some type of estate transaction after that. So it could be a family member transferring property, or sometimes the renter purchasing the property from the previous owner, because there was an opportunity to do that, which was great from that standpoint. So either way, that wasn't the intention of the program at the time, because at the time when the program was created, we were, I think, just a little bit more concerned that the property wasn't going into the hands of a developer, right? So right. At that time, that was primarily the issue. Of course, now we know that estate planning and generational planning is far more the critical issue, right? Because that's really what's more on the table, that's more timely at this time. So we'll be happy to ask those questions and where those investments are, and see if some of the families will share that information. Certainly not required here, but for us to learn and to move forward, I think whatever they're willing to share, we'll find out. I mean, certainly, I remember, and you may remember one of the earlier articles, that the Wardines, there was an article in Progressive Farmer magazine. They talked about that. That was one of the reasons that they participated, because they wanted their grandchildren to be able to inherit the land and be able to use the funds to be able to provide for that. So some families were very vocal and were willing to have their photograph in national magazines. Others were very, very quiet about it. So we'll see what kind of information that we can share. And, regarding the government and taking government money and all of that, that's a very real concern. We know that this is money that we receive from the riverboat, but it is certainly local government money. I know that some of the farmers that I talked to early on were very concerned about that. I can tell you personally, you know that because I talk about it a lot, my mom's family are farmers in northern Michigan, and my grandfather prided himself on never taking government money. So I know that story. My cousins don't take government money. I mean, this is a big deal. So yeah, it's just kind of funny and ironic for me that I'm in the program, I run the program that I do. But so no, I am very sensitive to that. I know that very much because, you know, my own farm family does not participate in federal programs. So yeah, so I know about that very much. So, you know, when it comes to farming, there's that big history there about that. So, yes, but there are other programs like the STAR program that are farmer led too. And so, you know, we're bringing, you know, and then I think that's a very important point in this whole thing is that, you know, the federal programs and funding programs are not the only programs available to us. And that's part of what the committee has charged us to do, is to expand that group of technical and financial resources for our farmers so that they're not just all federal, and to use the federal funds as a way to multiply and bring in other resources as well. So we're bringing in the full gamut of resources to our farm community, and the best that suit our farm community as well.
Another question from Debbie Allen.
Okay.
One more.
And the chairman breathes a great sigh. I just wanted to mention that the federal money is important because when we were first starting this thing, we were using riverboat dollars, and there were a lot more riverboat dollars back then. But the idea was that we got a match. How often does the county put something up where we get a match back? It's just phenomenal and wonderful. And so now we're not able to put up so much money, but it's still a match. That's just a great thing. I wanted to mention that I don't know what happened before me. I haven't done the research, but it was Chairman McCoy who I believe brought this program in, or encouraged Janice in bringing this program in and using the riverboat money for the match. And then Chairman McConaughey wrapped her arms around the program. I remember there's a very famous picture of her in front of one of the signs in front of one of the fields with a whole bunch of farmers around her that was published widely. And then Chairman Lawson came in and created the Agriculture Committee to show our dedication to a third of our county's property and all of those jobs and all of that income. So it's just we've been invested here for a long time, and I'm really glad of that. And Janice, you get extra stars because you made it all come together and work. So thanks. And Jody. So thank you all.
Thank you. It's a team effort. We couldn't do it without everyone, and looking forward to moving forward and taking everything we've learned from the last 20 years, celebrating a bit, but then, really pushing for, beyond. It's a forever program, which is awesome, right? So,
yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I want to thank Mr. Arnold for bringing the holiday light displays list from across the county, because it's pretty cool. Too bad we couldn't get it on Kane County Connects or something like that. Yeah, you can do that, but yeah, Blair, you can carry this forward. But I know we took our granddaughter to see the lights in Aurora, and there's so many things to do it, and most of them are free. It's an optimal word here. Mr. Copey? Mr. Copey had something he wanted to introduce.
Yes, go ahead.
Do you want to introduce that to the committee under new business, or you want to bring it forward more in print?
I'm
before
sorry,
we-
what is that?
Huh? Remember that
what were
long
you
email
referring
you
to?
sent me?
Oh, yes. I didn't know you would bring it forward this quickly, but that's great. Probably the best way to iterate the request would be to simply read it. Is that possible? Could you read that, or shall I read it?
What? You want to read it?
I'm sorry. We're talking about the letter I sent, I think yesterday, right?
Yes.
Can it be read?
I think so. We're over time, but we have to pay for the extra time we use.
Okay.
Why don't
well,
you
here-
just hit the high points?
Okay. I'll just read the second paragraph. An issue dear to my heart is the repurpose and retention of the Fabian property. Currently, there the school has thought that the property should be relinquished to the village of Geneva.
Tommy,
Pardon me. Go ahead.
we can't hear you very well. You want
All
him to
right.
slow down?
Well,
You're like the
You
young
wa- you wanna-
ladies. You're speaking
shall-
too fast.
Shall we curtail it to the next meeting?
All right. We'll do whatever you want. We can't hear you talking. Even the
All right. Okay. That's
secretary
the problem
can.
with this. That's the problem with this area I'm working. So I will. We can revert it to the next meeting if you'd like to. Can you still hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, the next meeting would be just fine.
All right.
Mr.
I'll try to make it in person then.
Before we put the reports on file, for the question of today was for the grand prize of milk chocolate pecan clusters.
Ooh.
Since nobody brought donuts for us, we talked about you this morning about bringing donuts. Blair misses your sweets.
Although I did find an alternate source this morning, so.
Oh, you down in finance? Down the
I will
paper.
never give away my, my secret
Very good.
connections.
Okay, let's, how many meals were served for the Northern Illinois Food Bank? Mr. Leonard has his hands up.
96 million.
Okay, you get the prize.
I'd like to defer that over to either Miss Allen or Blair because I won't eat it, but hopefully they can enjoy it.
Blair?
Alan, ladies first.
Would you like it?
And that's
There
our
you are, Blair.
projected meals. That's how many we're projected to serve this year, just to clarify.
I have teenagers at home. I'm sure they will disappear very quickly.
Good.
Okay,
Thank you.
it's to a good cause. And now we need a motion to put the reports on file. Mr. Leonard, Mrs. Allen, discussion on this, no discussion. Take the roll, please.
Brown? Yes. Frost? Gopi? Leonard?
Yes.
Sanchez?
Yes.
Allen?
Aye.
It's approved. Now we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Sanchez.
Sanchez moves, Mr. Brown seconds. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign.